Have you ever felt like you're talking, but no one's really hearing you? Or worse, that the silence between you and someone you care about is growing louder every day? If you've ever struggled with feeling misunderstood, disconnected, or stuck in a cycle of miscommunication, you're not alone. Communication challenges are one of the most common and most painful issues in relationship, leaving many people feeling confused, lonely, or unsure where they stand. In this episode of the Hearts of Men podcast, we're diving into the powerful truth. Every conversation holds hidden potential to transform your connection, heal wounds, and unlock deeper understanding. But that power often remains buried beneath frustration, fear, and old habits. Tonight, we'll explore how to break through those barriers, how to listen actively, speak authentically, and create conversations that build bridges instead of walls. Whether it's your partner, a friend, a colleague, or even yourself, you have the ability to unlock the hidden power in every exchange. So if you're ready to turn difficult talks into meaningful dialogues and discover the strength that lies in your words, let's begin this journey together. Now, like we always do, gentlemen, we tend to start this conversation by, just putting a question out there, and that question kind of gets us moving in the right direction. And it's one of the ways that we tend to warm up this diesel engine that we tend to embark into. But before I do, I want to make sure that everybody understands that here on this channel, the Empowering Perspective channel, we believe that everybody is a subject matter expert of their own opinion. And so as best we possibly can, we steer away from just opinionated statements that are not rooted in some sort of fact or some type of statistical backing. But again, opinions are welcome. Welcome. So again, if you're in the chat, share your thoughts, share your opinions, ask questions, because that's one of the things that we value on this channel. You guys know I tear up a whole show just to make sure that we're answering the questions. So that said, let's kind of dive into this first question. And I think that really gets us started in the right direction. So, what is one common communication pattern or habit you've noticed that you believe might be handicapping relationships?
Interrupting. Um, I think a lot of times, and I have been it. I'm guilty of it. That is something that I am constantly working on. I'm a talker. I like to hear myself talk sometimes. And I think sometimes that I think that everybody else wants to hear what I have to say too. So over the years, I've found myself interrupting conversations a lot of times. Well, not a lot of times, but a lot of times in the past, my conversation started midway through your talking point. So I've learned since then how important it is to build and have good relationships, is that the communication and effective communication is very important in that. And you want to have those good relationships. No one wants to constantly be stepped over while they're having a conversation. If I'm having a conversation and Roland is speaking to me and I interrupt him midway, then what message I'm relaying to him is that whatever you have to say is not important enough right now, and what I have to say is more important. So for me, constantly interrupting, is one pattern or bad habit that is handicapped in relationships. But again, I will say this is something that I am currently and consistently working on. This is something that I struggled with a lot in the past. I still struggle with it sometimes, but it is something that I am currently working on.
So let me ask a question, because you said something I think is key. You said your conversation starts midway in the midst of that person talking. What do you mean when you
Mhm.
say
So when Roland is talking and he's having a conversation, he's saying, "Oh yeah, last week, man, when I had my granddaughter and I took off for ice cream. Oh yeah, man, when I went out and I had grand ice cream with my granddaughter." So he's halfway through his talking point, but I'm looking to return and input my 2 cents into his conversation. So even before he can finish his thought, I have already inputted my 2 cents into the conversation, and that's very disrespectful.
I like that. I like that. To go along with that, I hate it when people say, "Well, let me stop you right there," because
You already interrupted.
yeah,
I don't
uh,
mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
Yes, you do. That's why you
as you
interrupted.
do it.
It was
Yeah.
a conscious decision to interrupt. So just because you say, "Hey, I didn't mean to interrupt," you've already interrupted.
absolutely. All right, who's next?
I'll go. When somebody, and it just rubs me the wrong way, when you're talking, you bought a motorcycle, all of a sudden, oh, I bought an RV. When somebody got to one up you, like whatever you've done, whatever you're talking about, they got a story greater. They caught a bigger fish. They were better in high school. They were this. It's like you just have to have a spotlight on you. For some odd reason, when it's not on you, you feel minimized instead of allowing the person to get out their thoughts, to tell what their day has been like or whatever it is. You got to feel the need to input self in there so I can feel important as well.
Yeah, the one upper man. That's I'm with you 100%. Brother Caddy, what you got?
I said that one up sound like every conversation in the smoke pit back in the day, you know. But man, one thing I noticed I would say would be gaslighting. Right? And I know we're not talking about just intense conversations or hard conversations, but you just talk about communication patterns. Um, and so I notice a lot of people. Well, we say gaslighting today, back, but a lot of people like to throw out a narrative to kind of reshape your point or your point of view or how you feel about a thing. And I guess this is why a lot of people don't talk about certain things that, well, I would say we say not to talk about certain things at work, but we still do. People still do. But I that's one of the things I notice is like, oh, you feel this way about let's just say you feel this way about cops, but what about the people who get this every day? And what about when this happens to and it's like we're just throwing out narratives because you're trying to emotionally handicap the conversation to pull me one way or to sway my opinion versus let's just have a conversation. This is the point I was making, but to me that creates toxic communication.
Yeah, I agree. There's multiple forms of gaslighting. And that's for me personally, I just don't like that term because it's not specific. It's a broad term that incorporates a number of different aspects that go into you know some bad conversation habits. Line like I guess the big one for me, and I would say this is that when people can't stay with the conversation, if I am talking about my little red Georgia cup here and you moved it, and then I ask you specifically about this cup, but then you move the conversation over here. No, come on back. Come on back to this conversation right now. And one thing that I've gotten really good at doing is making sure that I do not allow the conversation to go off the road into the woods or whatever the case may be. Bring it back in the road because we need to have this particular conversation. And I think a lot of times when people do that, they do that because what they don't want to do is either, be accountable for their actions, be accountable for their behavior in that particular moment. And so when you bring that up, kind of going back to what you just said, Gad, and when you bring up something particular and they feel like it's directly in relation to them and they feel offended or they feel like you're attacking their character per se, then they'll go off over here and talk about something that has absolutely nothing to do with the conversation. So that's one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes down to it. But it's a number of them. It's a number of them, as you guys just noted, and there's a number of them that are being brought forth into the chat as well. His divine appointment, she makes mention of one common habit I've seen is others' inability to speak up for themselves and being honest about a situation or the environment. That can be problematic because at the end of the day, it's almost as though you don't too particularly care for a thing. And I'm careful with this one because just because I don't like a thing don't necessarily mean that the thing I don't like isn't right. It just means that I don't like it. So I need to search self right? And understand whether or not it's something that I need to bring up. But if I don't bring it up when the opportunity is available, then I should not bring it up and have these conversations with Roland, Gaddy, and Garfield, because at the end of the day, that's kind of like a very underhanded way of doing something when the opportunity was right there. You could have said something then, but you didn't. And we probably could have had a great conversation about it. But instead, I want to talk to it with my trusted friends because I feel like I can vent to them. Well, here's another side to that. I may not want to be involved in that conversation today. I probably got a lot on my plate. I probably got a lot going in my mind. I don't want to hear all that today. So that's another one as well. Miss Charlotte Jordan brings to the table not active listening, and I'm glad she did because active listening is huge. And we're going to talk a lot about that when it comes down to active listening as well. Let me see. Lisa Keys says, hold on, let me see. There we go. Lisa Keys says silence can hinder the relationship as well. And I think that goes twofold. We just kind of talked about one of them just now. But silence, and Lisa, if I'm talking outside of what you are saying, by all means, clear it up and give us more clarity with this. But I'm believing that needing to have a honest conversation with someone, but electing not to. That's one version of silence. In the midst of having a different conversation, shutting down is another one as well. So all great points, and I greatly appreciate you guys putting those points in the chat. Any other things you guys want to kind of share before we kind of dive into the rest of this?
Yeah, because I noticed, and thank you for the ladies in the chats because y'all kind of broke up a little. I'm not gonna say monotony, but I noticed when all the men, when we gave our points, the one thing that hit out to me while you were talking, Coach, it's just summed it all up. It started making me think: do men communicate with men in competition? Because it just the one upper, the cutting off, the want to shape the conversation or control where the conversation goes. It sounds like we have. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to derail and go left, but it just sounds like as we talk, we just hear competition. Why when Roland tell me how good what he used to do in high school, I got to have a better story. He's not competing against me. He's just sharing the story. But I feel like that like with every point that we made up here on the panel, it felt like we've all experienced competition in conversation, unwarranted.
I will say this. I think some of that competition is ego. And I think some of it is just kind of sort of how we are, how men are, and kind of how we were raised. If you think about it, when we start, you think if we go back to elementary school, most of the games that we played we were competition and we were on teams and different things like that. So competition, I believe, started for men, since you specifically said men, at a very early age in life. And then sometimes as we age and stuff, we're competing. All of us were competing with people for sergeant, for staff sergeant, for sergeant first class. We all were in competition with other people. So, with that being said, we understand that this is a competitive world and that we have to go out there and compete. And sometimes I believe that rolls over into our personal life, good, bad, or indifferent. I think it happens sometimes. And I think that once men get to a certain level and that they're mature, they kind of understand that. And then they kind of start to try to gravitate away from that. Where I remember being younger and having a lot of conversations where they were one uppers and I was in competition for a lot of people, not necessarily because I was really in competition with them, but some of it was ego and some of it was immaturity about how to communicate with other people. I'm not in competition with neither one of you guys up here. However, back in the day, I would, for whatever reason, try to compete in competition with talk and words, and my chest is bigger and some of the other things that you said. But I think as we grow and as we mature, we realize that we're in this together, and I'm in no competition with anybody except for myself. So I do understand what you're saying, and I do agree with it in a sense, but I think it's kind of twofold as to why specifically why men tend to be competitive with about things. But that's just, again, I'm an expert of my own opinion.
I like where both of you guys went, because I think when it comes to competition, some of that is communication with men, because the conversation may be a little different with the opposite sex. The competition thing may go out the window because the conversation is different. What the talking points are different also. A lot of time, not all times, but the talking points are different. But where I wanted to go is when someone will try to, if I complain about something you've done, you will turn around and say, well, you did this, this, that, and you bringing up stuff from 7 months ago when you had a chance 7 months to say something about it. But instead of going there, you didn't go there. You waited until I had a problem with something you've done to shift the blame back onto me and not take ownership of what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mean when I say keep it in the road, right? Because that's what you'll find people who don't want to accept, take responsibility for their own actions. That's kind of like what they do. As far as the competition thing, I don't think I get it. I agree with what you guys are saying. Not that you said it for me to agree, but I think that's just a people thing, because I also believe that when you're in that state of immaturity, you just compete with everybody you talk with, because you think that you're in competition with everybody, whether it's a man or a woman. But once you get to that point, like Garfield say, when you realize you're not in competition with anybody else, then it doesn't really matter who they are, what they've done, what they accomplished, whatever the case may be. You find a way to celebrate them. But I think that's just a people thing, and again, that's my thoughts on it. But yeah, I'm thinking back over my life that I feel like I needed to compete with other men, sure, but I don't think it was men specific. I think it was just people. And as I think more into it, that's kind of like what makes sense to me. But again, you know, my thoughts. Um, Greatly appreciate that. Also, one last point before we move on. His divine appointment said, I also find it frustrating when you speak with someone about a thing and they tell you about someone else or what they're going through, right? So you're trying to hijack my conversation that I'm trying to have with you. And that's a very dangerous thing. So let's kind of dive into this, because I think we've already started this along the right path. And I think some of the things that we talked about already, you're going to find that some of the key points that we're going to hit. So first, I want to look at exposing the 3 silent killers, and I want to be straightforward with these because I don't want there to be any confusion. So the first silent killer is what we call communication barriers, and those communication barriers include silence, stonewalling, and avoidance. Communication is the foundation of any deep and broad relationship. When communication breaks down, whether through silence, stonewalling, avoidance, or silent treatment, partners are unable to share their true feelings, thoughts, and needs. And this leads to misunderstanding, emotional distance, and gradual erosion of trust and intimacy. And again, we talked about stonewalling on earlier. We talked about the silent treatment, avoidance of difficult conversation. I think we mentioned as well. And the one thing we did not mention is assumptions and misinterpretations. And I kind of want to talk about that here coming up. Number 2 is contempt and resentment. Contempt, characterized by disrespect, mockery, or a sense of superiority, is considered the most poisonous of the Gottman's 4 horsemen. And if you don't know who Gottman is, it's a great book. It's someplace on my shelf. And he and his wife has done a lot of work in the realm of relationships, to the point where they could almost predict when a divorce is about to happen. And so when resentment, which often builds up from unresolved conflicts or perceived mistreatment, festers beneath the surface and can turn into contempt if not addressed. So again, contempt we'll talk about a little bit, resentment we'll talk about as well. And then number 3 is growing apart, immobility, complacency, and external influences. Relationships require ongoing effort, adaptation, and shared growth. When partners become complacent, stop investing in the relationship, or fail to adapt to life changes, they risk growing apart. This immobility can be exacerbated by external influences such as financial stress, societal expectation, or even technology. One of the things we did not talk about is loneliness or isolation. And so I kind of want to kind of touch on a couple of things as we go into it, because a lot of times, and we as men, we're guilty of that. We're guilty of this. When we're dealing with something, we like to sit by ourselves and sit quietly And then when asked, like, what's going on, our response is, I'm fine. Or if we get into a heated discussion or whatever the case may be, and this is not necessarily men specific, but you will hear certain things where someone may say fine or whatever, whether it's via text or whether it's via verbal conversation, fine, whatever. And so those things are not conducive to unpacking the conflict and getting down to the root cause of it. So the question that I have is, why do we default to vague phrases like I'm fine? And when you answer that question, try to share with us like what fear drives this.
I will start. Why do we default to vague phrases like I'm fine? Definitely another situation where I have been guilty of. So, coach, all in my business tonight, and I'm okay with sharing the lessons learned from those stories. Speaking from me was, if I go back to the past, I think sometimes we do that because the person who asked us, we don't trust them. We don't trust them with the information that's in our head. So I'm having a conversation with this person. We just had whatever. And now, for whatever reason, I don't trust that whatever I say after that is going to be used in good context. So there's a bunch of different reasons, but I would say one of them is trust. So the fear that drives this is the trust. I don't trust you. Sometimes when I say stuff, you throw it back in my face. Sometimes if I say something very small and minute, it's very big to you. Sometimes if I'm direct, you get offensive. Sometimes you don't like my tone, you get offensive. So all of these things, it's better for me just to sit over here in silence and say, you know what? I'm fine. Because I fear that whatever I say, you're going to be triggered by what I say. And now that's going to lead to more discourse in our relationship. So I believe that some of that, what fear drives this is the trust. And I think that's sometimes why we do it, because we don't trust the other person with the information that we have stored in our brain that we really would like to talk to you about, that we really would like to share, or that someone really would like to share, but they don't trust you. They can't say it because it's going to go south. So I just think those are some of the reasons why.
I like that. And I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong by saying this, I think a lot of times we go into it as an open book. We kind of share like all of our plans and our thoughts and whatever the case may be, but then something happens. And that something tells me that I made a mistake by sharing all of this with you. And so now I start to refrain from sharing it. Am I correct by saying that, or is it
You're
different?
100% correct. That's exactly what I was speaking about.
Okay, very well.
See, that's right where I was gonna go. Because I was gonna start with, if you're viewing this, whether it's in real time or not, and your first thought was maybe that person is not confident in themselves. Maybe they got issues they got to deal with. That's the fear. That's why you got stonewalled. That's why you got to find whatever. Uh, and it's because you specifically asked about the fears that drives this, that drives this, and just being honest, because I think I'm not gonna say I've been there before, to where I felt like continuing this conversation was going to lead down a real bad, a dark path, because you're going to mishandle everything I say because you're trying to win and not understand. And so, like, even when you say, coach, like, you think the competition is a person thing, I think especially like in relationships, when arguments go on, sometimes people are more focused on winning the argument versus coming to a conclusion or coming to a good end, and sorting these things out. So what tends to happen is, when I say something that bothers me, you're trying to defend yourself. And sometimes defending yourself means you're going to bash how I feel, or belittle how I feel, or turn me more into the bad guy. And it's like, well, I'm tired of being the bad guy at the into every conversation. So I'm just going to shut it out right now before we even go that far, because already feel myself about to get frustrated. And you know, and I hate to say it, but I'm gonna say it, but some people live their life based upon heated conversations. I've met people, I've talked to people, I've dated people, like, you can't open your mouth and not argue or be angry. Like, and so sometimes people tread lightly when they talk to people, even when you're in a relationship, just because I don't want to argue today. So I'm just not going to talk. Or you ask me, how you doing? I'm good. You all right? I'm fine. You want something? Nah. Because I just don't want to argue, because we're going to argue about something. Oh yeah, I want Cold Stone. Somebody, yeah, I just had to bring it back up. Like, I want Cold Stone. Cold Stone. I don't want no Cold Stone. Why you always want Cold Stone? You somebody at Cold Stone, you're like, no, I just want a Cold Stone. Like, why we gotta argue over ice cream? Can we just get you know what? I know what I want. Sleep. Go to bed when I get home.
You know, that's actually pretty good. Some people are so conditioned to drama that they feel uneasy when peace exists. I like that. Ro, what you got, man?
I'll say something simplistic because it's 4 men up here, and we've, maybe not us, but society has conditioned men to suck it up. So it's a cultural or gender conditioning for us to say, "Nah, I'm good," and you suck up a lot. You stop voicing your opinions because you don't want to go through the conflict, as Gaddy was just talking about. You don't want to hear what's on the other end of that, because it's always been told that you got to suppress your emotion and you got to not show what you're feeling. You got to always be in control. So you just say, I'm fine. Oh, I'm good. And you're lying to yourself and the person at the same time. And some people just don't have the emotional awareness or vocabulary. Sometimes they don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to express the words to what you're asking. So I'm going to say I'm fine, so I don't have to dig into this, because I know if I say something, you may be more articulate than me and you're going to pick at everything I say. And so now it's like, okay, you confuse me even more. I don't even know what we started with, because you done roped me around, and now we're around the corner. And I'm like, okay, all I was just trying to do was get some Cold Stone with Gaddy, and you worried about the chick standing behind the counter. So I don't know.
Y'all are killing me with the Cold Stone tonight. You know, at least I commend you guys from staying away from the other location. That's that. So what you just said, Roland, that's the direction I was gonna go, but I'm not gonna go that direction because of, you know, what someone else may think or what someone else is feeling or whatever the case may be. Like, a lot of time, I just don't know. I can't put it into words. I'm processing it. I'm thinking about it. Like, I'm trying to solve a problem, but you want me to talk to you about it in the midst of solving the problem. I don't want to talk to you about the problem. I want to talk to you about the problem, then the solution that I came up with. And then when I give you the solution, I need for you to hear the solution and then respond to the solution. Because a lot of times, if I introduce you to the problem, you're going to add a problem on top of the problem. So it's like, that's one of those things. Like, yeah, I think I'm fine. It's not always about fear. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. Me saying I'm fine is that I'm trying to figure something out. Give me the time and space to figure it out. Then I'll talk with you about it later. But just because you're asking a question right now in relation to the thing that you can see that I'm thinking about does not necessarily mean I have the answer. And I think that's one of the misunderstandings that a lot of people have. And then they'll turn around and say, well, he just don't talk to me. No, you just aren't patient enough for me to talk to you. So I think that's another aspect to it as well. There is a comment I would like y'all opinions on. And remember, the question was about vague phrases. So vague phrases usually mean you don't want to elaborate on what you may what may have just happened, or you don't want to continue a conversation that may lead to an argument. Your thoughts?
I think that could be true at times, but I think sometimes if I say I'm good, I'm good. And if you want to ask me a close-ended question, I will give you a close-ended answer. So if you want to have a conversation, you can't just say yes or no phrases and expect for me to just expound on everything that's stuck in your head. See, I think sometimes people want you to read their mind and answer those questions versus the questions that are coming out of their mouths.
Yeah, I mean, all the above, really, on this one. It's funny, like, so I tell people, like, we just start talking, and I tell you I'm fine. I can tell you now I'm fine. Like, that's what I mean. But if in the beginning of us talking, or whatever you want to call it, and I say I'm fine, and you start playing, now I'm like, oh, you might be conditioned to people with bad communication habits, or you might be conditioned to negative communication habits. So that, to me, and it's just Gaddy, just my perspective, but that's a red flag. I raise it. If we were 2 weeks in and I say I'm fine, you're like, what's wrong? Just tell me what's wrong. Oh, that flag started waving. Red flag. But that's just me, because I'm just fine.
Yeah, I can see this. I don't know about the usually part. The only thing I would maybe adjust to this when it says usually, I think there are so many different variations or reasons why people don't elaborate. Like mentioned, sometimes you ask me a close-ended question, you're gonna get a close-ended response, and it doesn't mean I don't want to elaborate. But you ask me yes or no question. You ask me, how you doing? And I said, I'm fine. So I just gave you a short response to a short question. So I don't necessarily mean it's like all the time. So I don't know about usually, but I can definitely see some correlation between not wanting to elaborate, especially after something that's just happened, because a lot of times after something has just happened, and I'm assuming that we're talking about some argument or disagreement or something like that between at least two parties. So when that happens, sometimes feelings are still involved, and emotions and different things like that are still part of that equation. So sometimes just saying I'm fine is okay. I do believe that that's not enough. Sometimes I do believe that, and that's where knowing the person that you're having this conversation with, the relationship that you have with this person, also may dictate how you respond to certain things as well.
Can I add something? Because I think that timing has a lot to do with short answers.
Timing too, 100%.
If I'm currently doing something and you come trying to have a conversation, this may not be the right time. You got to let me know so I can get my mind right. So I can either stop doing what I'm doing and say, hey, I get to you. Let me finish this. So now I can pay you the attention that you so eagerly desire, instead of getting on my nerves, asking me questions that I really don't want to answer. So I'm going to push you off so I can finish doing what I'm doing instead of you irritating me, because that's what you're doing at the end of the day.
So how do they know when is the right time? Because I'm thinking about that, and I'm with you. If I'm watching the game, don't ask me no tough questions, because I'm not finna have that conversation. If I'm doing something, working on something, don't do it. If I'm listening to me, don't do it. And so it's like, do you catch me in the middle when I'm coming out the garage? Do you get what I'm saying? Because it's a question I can't answer. Because if a woman asks me that, how do I know when's the right time?
So let me kind of sweeten the pot a little bit, because I think the Simon thing is pretty obvious. But what about intuition? She has intuition, right? What if she intuitively believed that something is wrong, regardless of what you say?
She need to call Miss Cleo or somebody.
I ain't messing with that one. I'm leaving that one alone. Mute my mic.
But why? It's an honest question.
Everybody up here started laughing because we ain't.
Because that intuition is just like,
I don't believe in women's intuition.
It's just like the conversation about red flags. Everybody has issues, so we can pick and prod people to find out their faults instead of actually getting to the root of the problem. When you come to intuition, half of the time intuition is nosiness or past behaviors that you're seeing in somebody else that you think, oh, I knew. You didn't know anything. You just seen something that you seen before in somebody else, so you putting two and two together. Not because everybody has. I've never seen intuition like that in the scripture. I've seen this thing start with the D when they talk discernment. Yeah, but intuition I haven't seen. So when people say women's intuition, it you assume that men can't have the same intuition. Like, okay, so
Hey, Nick D said what my grandmama used to say.
what she say?
She ain't got intuition. She got indigestion.
But wait a minute now. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what you guys said. Garfield, you said something. You said I don't believe in that. What do you mean, sir?
I may have a very unpopular answer, and I don't know. I don't want to be offensive or disrespectful to anybody that may be watching, but I just don't necessarily believe in it. I believe that how can I say? I will say what I see. I will leave it. I will say it this way. There's a lot of different things on social media that you can see. When I look at social media, I don't see that. I see a lot of. I just don't see it, and that's not necessarily disrespect. I don't mean it to be disrespectful. It's just something I just don't necessarily see. I kind of like what Roland said about the discernment. I kind of like the fact that kind of like the discernment fact over what I said as far as I don't know if I necessarily believe it. I kind of maybe more so believe in discernment over women's intuition, because I'm thinking if it's women's intuition, that all women would have it, and that means all women would choose and make very good decisions because they have this thing that would give them almost like an upper edge. You know what I mean? So if you have something that's an upper edge, it would produce upper edge results. Not saying that it's not the case. I'm gonna stop right now before I go too far. I don't want to offend anybody.
See, I like his divine's question because that was going to be a part of the point that I wanted to make off the back of that, because it feels like, and it's just for me, it feels like when I hear women intuition is always related to somebody being off. Why your intuition don't tell you that I'm feeling good? Why your intuition don't tell you that I just need a hug or some silence? Why your intuition always mean that I'm cheating, I'm doing something, I'm off, I don't like you, like, and that's where my
Boy got
problem
a
with
point
it comes
right
in.
there. The boy got a point. I'm rocking with Gaddy tonight.
Because intuition is solely based off of feelings. And when we're coming up, they deal with Barbie and they having relationships. We deal with little toy soldiers and we're actually reasoning. And so when reason comes into play versus feelings, I'm like, yeah, I'm tired. I mean, why something got to be wrong? Because I'm tired. I flopped down because I had a hard day at work. I'm tired. Let me decompress. But you, nah, because you're feeling something. And then when you start feeling, and I'm not feeling what you're feeling, then it's a problem with me. And I'm with Gaddy. If it's only when something is bad, how true can it be if it's one-sided?
I agree. I think, and you hear it all the time. But if there is a thing called woman's intuition, then there must also be a thing called man's intuition. And so, what does man intuition look like? No one knows because you don't ever talk about it. No one ever talks about it,
This
right?
is the first time I heard the term when you just now said it.
Right. So I think that's the thing. I think Cass said, you don't care. She don't care what you call it. Anyone is capable of perceiving change in someone's demeanor. Sure, I agree with that 100%. But change in a person's demeanor doesn't necessarily mean that there's a problem between me and you. It just probably means that I am thinking about something. Don't necessarily look at my demeanor and automatically assume that something is going on, or whatever that case may be. I think that's one of the biggest things that we do in error is we tie a particular thing to a gender and say that because it happens all the time, then it belongs to that gender, and that's an error. I agree with what Roland says. A lot of times, what you're perceiving is your past trauma, your past experiences that you've never resonated with. And because you are hypersensitive to that behavior, anything that looks very similar to that, you automatically have this feeling, as he said, and that's what you think it is. Well, no, a lot of it is probably just you, just simply because you have not necessarily came to the point of harmonizing with it yet. So that's kind of like where I go with that. Greatly appreciate everybody's response. Go ahead, Gary.
I don't want to keep being the one to stop the conversation or feel like but it's I'm gonna behave after this, I promise. The problem is the way that we view the genders, right? I'm not gonna say each other, I'm talking universally how we put the genders out there concerning relationships. Because when a man is off, when a man is feeling off, when a man's trying to collect himself, there's something going wrong. There's something he needs to address, something he did, something's wrong with him, he needs to fix. But when the woman's off, see, the man don't have intuition. The man is supposed to have a fix. You better go buy her flowers, she's off. You better go buy her candy, she's off. You better rub her feet, she's off. You better start taking some of the load off her, she's off. But when the man is off, it's he did something and we need to investigate. And I'm not saying there's anybody here, but it's the universal thought pattern. This is why you never hear nobody speak about man intuition, because what the man better intuit is some flowers. I'm just saying, but that's how the conversation universally goes.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I love it. I love it. Let's keep pressing. We're gonna skip over the next question, move to the next section. And the next section is all about the hidden power of communication. There is definitely a hidden power in communication. I think we don't do it well, and that hidden power is called listening. Listening is often seen as passive, but it's one of the most active and powerful tools in a conversation. Kind of like this conversation here. True listening creates trust, uncovers deeper meaning, and allows for authentic connection. And so, the first question that I want to tap into under this particular question: how can listening to decode versus listening to respond diffuse a conversation hijacked by the three silent killers?
I think when you listen to decode, you're listening not just to what's being said, you're also listening to what's not being said, how it's said, body language, and everything included. It's an overall listening versus I'm hearing the words coming out of your mouth and I'm going to run with what I think you're saying to me. Because I had a whole conversation last week where I'm telling a person something, but instead of listening to what I'm saying, they're saying, no, that ain't true. But I'm saying, how is not true? It's like it's legal. Well, just because it's legal don't make it right. We ain't talking right or wrong. We talking true. But they're listening to the words and they going to format it how they wanted to see it instead of listening to what I was trying to say. And then 20 minutes later, oh, yeah, you right. I knew I was right in the beginning, but you didn't listen to what I was saying. You heard a word that triggered you and you ran with it. And I think when you listen to decode, now I'm listening to everything, how you put the whole conversation so I can see where everything fits instead of me trying to fit it and formulate it into how I see it. I got to listen to how you're saying it.
I really like their response. Breaking everything down and then saying something. You know, when we're listening to respond, you know, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, something that I've struggled with and something that I continue to work on is interrupting people. A lot of times that comes because I've listened to Roland for a certain point. I've formulated my response, and then now I'm ready to curb and give it to him. I don't even have all the information. I haven't even decoded all of the information because I'm too busy formulating my response. So those things are very detrimental to the relationship, the conversation, and all of those different things. So how can decoding versus listening to respond diffuse it? How it just like kind of like what Roland says, it allows you to break down the conversation. So we're talking about going to Cold Stone. So this, and all the different contexts surrounding those things. And then response. So now by the time my response, I got some context, I may have a timeline, I may have some background, I may have a lot more information to be able to contribute to a conversation versus these formulated response that I have, because in most cases the formulated response is only coming from partial information. Because when you're listening to respond, you're just picking information and trying to respond to come up with your own stuff, but you haven't necessarily decoded the information down. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. I really like what the way Roland kind of put things into context too. So I'm kind of also kind of just jumping off of what he said.
Yeah, man. So this to me, this has always been a hard one because, of course, young and immature, I listen to respond because I don't know what it was, a confidence thing or something, but I always took the defense in conversations. I always felt like, like when we start talking about the character flaws, when we start talking about the imposter syndrome and stuff like that, I always felt like when people were talking, they were figuring out that I was a fake. I wasn't, really who they saw me as or what they thought I was. Like, so everything was defensive. So I used, so listening to respond was kind of, for me, it was listen to defend. And that's why I used to always, because I used to do the one upping thing. I wanted you to make sure you knew I was him. I want you to know that, wanted you to know that I wasn't to be played with, So I would always make sure those were emphasized in conversation, even when it wasn't necessary. But now, when we're talking about decoding, for me, I have to hear the whole thing. So sometimes it may seem like I'm going silent, but I'm not really starting to decode until I finish listening to what you say. So sometimes there's a pause, and so I have to sit on it, and I'm listening, and that's why I ain't got no problem. Never mind, I was about to go left. But I can let you talk for a little bit, because after I've received all the information I need from what you're saying, I can start to actually start the decoding process. So I think it allows it. So for me, the answer would be, it just allows you to hear the whole thing. What Psalms 18 says is, a fool that argues before hearing the whole matter. So just allows me to hear the whole matter.
But does this not put me in a position to where the other person will feel that I'm analyzing what they're saying?
I think that's what communication is, though. I think it's you analyzing the words and the tone and everything. That's if like we are stuck on Cold Stone. If I say, "Hey, let's go to Cold Stone," and somebody say, "Hey," they say something about that little girl behind the counter, or you just going to see her. Okay, ha, he once. If you come back and say it again, now I'm sensing a passive aggressive tone towards this thing and a disdain. So now I'm saying, okay, we going to Baskin Robbins, because I already sense negative communication coming out of your mouth in a positive way that you trying to mask it and act like ain't nothing wrong. So now I'm not even putting myself in that situation.
I'm definitely going to Cold Stone after that comment.
Can we get off of Cold Stone for 5 minutes to finish?
Hey, we can, after I figure out if there's one close to me.
Right.
Round
2 minutes away.
Nah, but yeah, I'm with them. I don't. Yeah, it ain't gonna make me feel like they think I'm analyzing them, because I am analyzing them. I'm analyzing what y'all saying. All right. How can I not, if I want to get to the root of the matter? What are you actually saying? Because sometimes when we're heated, especially if we're having a heated conversation and it's a back and forth, a lot of what you're saying is just added ingredients. You talking about having to wash something for me 6 months ago, just to lead up to the point you're trying to make about right now. So what is the point you're trying to? So yeah, I am analyzing you. I don't really care how you feel about that, if we can come to a proper conclusion. Are we dissolving, or are we rectifying?
See, there you go again. I'm rocking with Getty. That's where I was going. I think analyzing is a good thing if it's channeled in the right direction. Are you analyzing for the solution? Or are you analyzing to one up me or to say something in response or to get your point across or to win the argument or the conversation? So I think the analyzation is good. Like if I'm having a conversation with Gaddy, I want to be able to say something. I want him to be able to take everything that I've said, break it down, understand it, and then shoot back a response to me in a form of communication. And then the same thing, I'm going to do the same thing with him. I'm going to let, first of all, I'm going to let him complete his entire thought. I'm not going to interrupt him mid-sentence. I'm going to let Gaddy finish his entire thought, decode it, breaking down, and then respond back and forth. That's how conversations are supposed to be. So yes, I think that decoding or breaking down and analyzing that part of the conversation is a good thing.
I don't disagree with you. And I asked that question because that's what you hear all the time, right?
Yeah.
You hear, like, if you're listening intently to what a person is saying, and then they say something that is not congruent with what was said previously, and then you try to like connect the dots. So wait, over here you said this, but now you're saying this, and you'll hear things like, "Well, I don't need you to analyze everything that I'm saying." Well, it's like, well, what do you want? You know what I'm saying? What do you want? This is a confusing conversation, and you are even more confused in the conversation that you're trying to have with me because I'm listening to everything that you're saying and I'm regurgitating it. And so that's why I asked the question. Now, going back to the whole decoding thing, I think it requires you to know the person because at the end of the day, they encoded it. So it requires you to know them in order to decode it. I can decode it, sure, but I'm decoding it through the lens of my own perspective when it comes down to communication. But I also think that that also creates the problem for the person who feels that I am analyzing everything that they're saying because I am trying to decode their message. It is a it is an assumption made by them because they really don't want me to listen to the details of what they're saying. They just want me to listen to the end state. And it's hard to listen to the end state when I get so much information before you get to the end. So that's why I'm asking. So now, that being said, like, what does it mean to listen without judgment?
What does it mean? Listen without judgment. I don't know. I mean, cause listen without judgment, I can't say I won't judge something before it comes up. I can't say I have an opinion on something beforehand because if I feel a certain type of way before you said something, I ain't waiting on just you make it up. Like yesterday, somebody told me you're too literal. If we're having a conversation and those are the words that you use, those are the only words I can, I'm gonna take. I can't make it up how you mean it. And I think sometimes that when people are saying listen without judgment, they don't want your opinion to be yours. They want your opinions to be uh, more valuable to them versus how you may really feel. And it's a knock from them to me because they don't truly value how you feel or what you feel. What they want is you to agree.
I'm going to try to answer this with a story. I had a friend reach out to me some years ago, very close friend. Hey man, I need you to come bail me out of jail. What? I did some DV to my significant other. So listening without judging is this. I don't know what happened. I don't know the context behind that altercation between this person and their significant other. Listening without judgment is listening first before saying, oh, this guy's a bad person. He's an evil person. He should have never did what he did. That is listening without judgment. Listening without criticizing, listening with an open mind to get all of the information first. I think that's what listening without judgment is. To go on with this conversation, I'm not saying that he was in the right or anything. I don't ever think it's right for anybody to ever put their hands on anybody else. But if you would have heard the other side of that, I would just leave it at that. So I think listening without judgment is simply that. Listening without judging the person or the situation or the conversation first. And I will tell you this, it is hard sometimes because we are who we are. And a lot of times we walk around good, bad, or indifferent, whether we want to admit or not. A lot of us walk around judging people all day. Kind of hard not to, at least for me. And I don't want to say judge, it may be just familiar with certain situations. Maybe I act a certain way, not because I'm judging you, but every time I've been in this situation, this has happened. So, but I think it's simple in theory, but it's not necessarily easy to come out to actually put into practice all the time. But I think what it means to listen without judgment is to literally do that. Listen without judging that person first.
Before I say what I'm gonna say, I want y'all to not judge me and just listen, because I feel like
I just got to say that was corny. Go ahead.
no, listen. I'm just saying because I feel like I'm taking a negative on everything. So don't judge me. Just listen.
It's just a perspective. We
I
need
know.
differences of perspectives up here.
Touche. Just don't judge mine today. But
No wait to after.
wait, after exactly in the back. But when I just hear, please exonerate me from all accountability before I tell you what I'm about to tell you, because I know it paints me in the bad, and it can paint me in a bad picture. And I just want to be right, even though I feel like I could be wrong, and I don't want you to tell me I'm wrong. I want you to just don't take no sides, but take my side by not taking sides, because if you take sides, I know it's not going to be mine because I might be wrong. But again, I don't want accountability. That's what I hear. I could be. I might just need to go sit on your couch, coach. I don't know, but that's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
No, I get it. I get it. I like where Garfield was at in this one, because it is a very difficult thing to be in a conversation and suspend all judgment, suspend all assumptions, suspend all opinions and things of that nature while listening to the ins and outs of what someone is saying. But it is a requirement because at the end of the day, now that talks about that internal dialogue that's going on inside of me while that person is talking. And if we don't believe that we do it, we're sadly mistaken. So it's a thing that you have to focus on consistently while someone is talking. I'm not going to get to the point and I get what you're saying. And part of that can be true, right? Part of what Roland said can be true. But I also believe there's a requirement for me to listen wholeheartedly to what the other person is saying so that we can come to a conclusion in the end, not me, because you're talking to me about whatever it is that's going on with you. Well, if you're talking to me about whatever is going on with you, it requires me to, and I think it was Miss Charlotte Jordan who mentioned it, it requires me to actively listen. If I'm actively listening, I am listening, right, and hearing exactly what you're saying. I'm asking questions to get a better understanding. I'm responding in such a way that you understand that what you're saying is being heard and understood. That means that I can't put an opinion to it or whatever the case may be. And I think somebody put in the chat that I can't act like I'm trying to fix them in that particular moment as well. So all of that is part of the encoding thing. Go ahead.
Is it I can't have an opinion, or I just can't voice the opinion? Because if I'm actively listening, I'm going to come to an opinion because I'm actually hearing what's being said. It's going to be but you said it earlier, it's an internal conversation going on in my head. So to me is I just can't voice it. And so that's why to me it comes out as I want to tell you what I want to tell you. I want to get it out, but I don't want you to hold me accountable to what happened in this scenario I told you.
But if I have an opinion, does that not already mean that I have drawn a conclusion?
Even if it's after I said what I said, you actively listening, you still gonna draw a conclusion, whether it's at the end of it, in the middle. It's just you just don't want me to voice it.
But do I really need to draw a conclusion? Let's change the dynamics. Let's say if it's not your old lady or whatever. Let's just say it's like your best friend, right? And let's just say he is telling you about something that's going on in his household and he is bothered with what's going on in his household. Can you listen to what he is actually saying without having an opinion? Well, what did you do? Did you do, how did you start this situation in your mind while he is actually talking? Can I suspend what I am thinking? Can I suspend the need to have an opinion on his situation while he is sharing it with me?
I like that, Coach, because that's having empathy for, instead of me sitting up there trying to have my opinion base about the situation. Because simply because I don't agree with it doesn't mean I can't understand. Like, man, I got to feel for the person so I can understand that.
But it's
When
not
it,
the same thing. I'm sorry, I don't. But that's
I,
not the same thing. I'm
that's
not.
the
I
acknowledge
haven't
or analyze. Am I
because you.
acknowledging your feelings, acknowledging what's going on versus analyzing so that I can decode, so that I can state my opinion, so that I can make judgment versus, going that route.
I think you're going to still have your opinion.
Right.
Empathy don't mean I don't have an opinion. It just means I'm not voicing my opinion in this scenario.
Well, I think empathy is having a feeling for them and not standing in judgment. I think they said judgment. So judgment means I'm looking, it's a damning opinion towards what you're doing.
No, so on gave it a scenario of his homeboy DV, right? He said, I don't know the scenario. I don't know what happened. So I did. So he's suspending judgment because he didn't hear the story. But
Right.
once he heard the story, there was judgment, whether it was on him or the spouse. Because it could have been a response to what the spouse did.
So yes and no. So now during the conversation, this was some years ago. So I know kind of sort of what my mindset was back then. And I'm like, bro, you done messed up, bro. Like, you done messed up. Like, I know that. And either way, I was judging him saying you done messed up. I eventually got the whole story. I still think that it wasn't the right decision, but I understood why. But I can't go into any situation judging because I already think that this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? So if I'm already in my mind think that DV is wrong, and then the first thing you hit me with is DV, it's kind of hard not to judge. But the way I would handle it now is to step outside of who I am. Right now, my job is to be a friend and my job is to listen. And that is it. My job is to listen to what this person has to say and not judge him. I may not like him. That's irrelevant. I may not like what he did, but that's irrelevant. Right now, this person has come to me because for whatever reason, they have comfort or relationship or trust in me that they can share this thing. So the last thing that they need is me judging them. And I get maybe holding off the judgment or whatever like that until the end. And I think even then, maybe we should still kind of not judge even then. Even though we do, still maybe not. Because even though we got some context, that's still their life and their responsibility and what they're going on. Because whatever they got going on, I'm not the judge of them. They got a father somewhere. They got a maker, a creator, or somewhere else like that. That's for them to do, not for me. So even I may have an opinion, but may not necessarily have a judgment on that person. Like I have an opinion about that situation, but I didn't judge him for that one decision that he made in the entirety of his life.
And to his point, even though I do serves as information about me, for me to look at the fact that I had an opinion about what he was sharing as opposed to voicing it. Go ahead, Roland.
Oh, I was thinking when in that situation, I think that's where I may have an opinion about something that I think, but as the conversation goes and I'm hearing what's going on, now I don't come with, man, you should have just did this. Because now my judgment is coming into play and I can say, okay, I can see that. I can understand how you could feel like that. Now it's just differences. It's slight differences, but one is, man, I'm looking at it like it's almost damning, like, man, you messed up, like Uncle was saying, or it's like, man, I understand how it's a situation, but it's not to death. I mean, like, hey, we gonna figure this thing out. Versus, man, you done messed up and you going down.
I remember talking to Ro one time about a heated conversation I had with someone close to me at the moment, and I'm sharing with him the conversation, and he had empathy for what I was feeling and going through in that conversation. But when I told him one of the things I said in response, and he looked back, he said, "Okay, using your feelings at that moment, but I get what you were saying." He still had an opinion, but he still gave empathy where I needed it. I'm not saying that's all. That's all I'm saying. The opinion is there. We're just asking for it to be suspended.
I promise that didn't change my perspective at all.
I'm
I
just saying.
no, I'm just saying I appreciate you sharing that, but that didn't change a thing, right? And again, because I know Roland got an opinion. He gonna always have an opinion, and depending upon the relationship that he got with you, you gonna hear that opinion or not,
Yeah.
right? And Roland, no, that don't make it right, but he's still gonna do it. Exactly. See, that's my point. You gonna get it.
But he was able to have empathy with what the situation was, though. I'm like, I guess that's why I see it the way I see it, because I'm not hearing when I hear don't judge or don't have an opinion. That's going to happen anyway. We know that that's going to happen. I'm going to have an opinion. You just don't want it voiced in this conversation, and so that's why I hear exonerate me at this moment of accountability.
But I think when you have an opinion, that's not necessarily judging, though. I think they're two different things. I think you can have an opinion about me without judging me, but I think you can also judge me. I think there's I know there's a difference, but I do know that they probably cross over a little bit as well too. So
let's do this, because I think as we progress, it's going to continue to unpack this.
Okay, my bad.
No, you get. So we're going to transition into the art of asking transformative questions, right? Great questions don't just gather information. They spark curiosity, challenge assumptions, and invite deeper understanding. The right question can change the entire trajectory of a conversation. So the question that I want to ask you, gentlemen, and this is a great, great question after having that dialogue. How can we craft questions that challenge someone's perspective without making them feel defensive?
Definitely don't start with closed-ended yes or no answer questions. You got to give them something to allow them a sense of comfort and a sense that they can actually speak about what's going on without you slamming the door shut in their face.
I think it depends on one, the conversation, because and I'll be transparent. Like when we talking to men about relationships, sometimes just like we were talking about, we just listening. Uh, but when it comes to questions and stuff, I don't know. I'm just big on, have you done what you could? And it's funny because this is one of the questions that even Ro asked me once upon a time. Have you done everything that you could to fix the situation? But if it's one of those situations, some people just naturally feel defensive because they feel like it's all the other person's fault or something. You know what I'm saying? So I think it depends on the conversation, because they just may inherently get defensive initially. But how can we craft questions that challenge someone's perspective? So maybe wording it like, have you ever thought about this and to gather their opinion about another option versus saying you shouldn't do that, or you should do this, or you should have done this. Maybe say, have you thought about this, or this? And if so, well, what do you think about implementing that? Or do you think that would have changed the outcome of what took place? So questions like that.
See the F word feelings in there. You know what I mean? So I can't really make someone feel defensive or not. I think that is an individual responsibility. I do believe that I can take a look at the person in this that I'm in a relationship with, whoever that person is, and kind of look at things from a different perspective of maybe how I would want it to come out. I don't know. But I think that part of it has to do with you have to be kind of curious with your questions and you're not there to judge. You know what I mean? I think that's part of it. And I think maybe some sort of language that everybody kind of understands. You know, when you're when you talking to someone and you have a PhD in aerospace engineers and you're having a conversation, not saying that they can't speak on the same level, but you're talking to someone who graduated high school after 17 years. And I mean 17 years of schooling, not 17 years of age. All right. So just to be clear. Now, not to be offensive, but I think that when those two people are trying to have a conversation about perspectives and different things, and you're trying to ask the question, I think you have to use neutral language. If I'm an aerospace engineer and I'm using these words and languages and stuff like this, these PhD words that no one understands, it's not going to be effective. So I think using like certain languages and stuff like that and being curious with your questions and not necessarily judging people with that line of questioning and stuff like this. And then lastly, you got to keep your ego out of that joker too. Got to keep ego out of it.
Coach, if I can, I think had to do it as leaders in the military. You take a soldier every month and you're counseling them and you point them to them. Like, what are you doing to make you available for the next rank? What are you doing to elevate yourself past these people? And you put it in their court and they got to look in the mirror. They got to look in the mirror and say, dog, I'm just sitting here biding time. I'm not doing anything to help this situation. It's the same in relationships. How are you making this better or worse? What are you doing to this? And you put the ball in their court, they got to look in the mirror. They can't look at you because it's not your judgment now. They're looking within.
Okay, great point. And I'm glad you mentioned that. And so I kind of want to ask this question in conjunction with it. Should I ask a question that I already know the answer to?
If you think that the answer is going to help them see things differently or see clearly, because sometimes asking a question versus giving the opinion, as we talked about before, helps better. Because sometimes if you give it to me as your opinion, it may come off as judgy, right? Or as if you know it all. So sometimes the question asking helps me think that I got to the answer. And it makes me think on what I just said versus feeling attacked by what you said.
And since
I will say, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and since Gaddy keep throwing me out there, Gaddy if he came to me and I know he did something not so smart, not so intelligent, I'm gonna ask him a question I know the answer to, and if he try to give me some bull, I'm gonna call him out on it. Like, really, dog, come on, now you did. Like, what about this? Come on, now let's be truthful, because I'm trying to expose you to you, so we can be honest in this thing, not so we can just sit up here and pacify your emotions. We're trying to get to the root of it. So let's get to the root of it.
So for me, the word intention keeps popping up in my head. The intention has to be good behind answering or asking a question you already know the answer to. I think if you can use it to help solve a problem, maybe you had a long conversation and someone kind of missed something, or you think that it may not be as clear, or they may not have an understanding about something. So I think in those cases are yes. But don't ask me malicious questions that you already know the answer to just to start something or to try to do something maliciously or try to manipulate a situation. I think if you're using it for good, I think that's okay. But like so my answer would be um I think it's okay. I don't know about the word should. I think it's okay to use sometime if it's for the greater good of the conversation or the relationship or something like that. But not to, hey, who you was talking to at the store, knowing you didn't already somebody your friend already done sent you the video footage already. You know what I mean? And you just trying to see if I'm gonna tell you the truth or not. You know what I mean? So I think in those situations, it's not necessarily okay. Come on and be like, hey, look, man, my friend sent me a video and I got you on tape talking to some girl at Cold Stone. So at
I feel
Walmart.
like
Chilling with
as a
Walmart.
school,
So I think so at the end I think it's intent behind asking the question that you already know to have the answer is going to help or hinder the conversation or the relationship going forward.
I feel like as a school counselor, you've done this before.
A little bit.
A kid came to you torn about two options, and you ask him, "Well, would you rather have this or would you rather have that?" And you already know which one is the better option. You know which one that kid going to choose.
With those things I use sometimes, those are called forced choices. So yeah, that's kind of similar, but yeah, a
So
little different. Yeah.
so that's how I guess that's how I see it. I see it
Yeah, you
as
tell your
that.
kid, hey, you want a punishment or you want whooping? That's a forced choice. Yeah.
Well, so that's so again, let's kind of like peel that back a little bit because like you gave a great example of when it's not a good time to ask that question when you already know the answer, but when is a good time to ask a question that you know the answer to?
We're
And
having a conversation. Go ahead.
no, I was saying it's not just you. I'm just
Okay.
asking in general.
I think any relationship, when you look at something and something is a little stale, am I showing up fully in this relationship? Am I putting my all as my heart in this? You know, that when you start to feel a certain when you can ask yourself, I don't have to ask somebody else.
So
Yeah,
for me, it's
will you be
me.
honest? Will you be honest with yourself? That's the number one question. Go ahead, Garfield.
Me and Shell had an argument. This is a scenario. We had an argument. Oh, we're having a discussion. We're talking about whatever it is, and we don't necessarily disagree. And we're going back and forth trying to come to a solution. And then I come out and I talk for 10 minutes nonstop. And she said, yeah, babe, I got everything. Right. I may circle back around and say, hey, did you understand the part that I said, when I said that I was going to do better at this? Yeah, I got it, blah, blah, blah. So I think sometimes to reiterate or to reinforce something that may have already been established, like I said, I think kind of in that situation that it's okay. I hope I answered.
Ish, and I do want
Ish,
to clear something up.
ish.
What I said previously wasn't directed at Roland, but what
Mhm.
I'm saying is that most people have a constructed perspective in their head, and that perspective that they have in their head is also the perspective that they're projecting on other people. So when I ask myself certain questions, a lot of times it's jaded by that perspective, and I want to believe that about myself. So a lot of times I will, fake it till I make it, lie to myself until I'm convinced that that's who I really am. Gary, what say ye?
When is a good time?
Sure. Because we can come up with a lot of bad times. It's
Yeah,
easy.
I mean, I'm trying to think of like scenario time, but I feel like when for me when people are because I think we know people that are just defensive. They'll come to you for they'll come to you and talk to you about anything, but they're defensive as soon as you know an opinion is given if it's not you're right. So I think to me, whenever if there's something that they may need to see or conclusion they may need to hear, and we know that maybe giving an opinion in this moment may not be the most productive thing, then asking questions even if we know what the answer is, but it's kind of like just to lead them to seeing what you're trying to get them to see in the space of what's going on. It's like, all right, so you see your, because I'm thinking about like, okay, you see yourself as good. Like Rose said to me, I only put you on blast first of all, Rose, because you're right here. You know what I mean? But but like Rose said, if he see me doing something that ain't right, he just gonna tell me. But if every time he tell me I'm fighting him, then he start asking questions. I use for example, remember when the prophet, I'm losing names right now because it just popped in my head, came to David and said to David, "What if a man did this?" Laid out everything David did, and he said, "What if a man did this? What would you do?" He said, "Well, that man should be put to death." See, now you see that there's a problem with what just happened. Well, David, that man is you. But had he came straight to King David, understanding this is King David, and say, "Hey, you ought to be put to death." What? Hey, somebody come get this dude. Throw him in the dungeon. What? So he had to get him to see it and ask a question he already knew the answer to, so that David can see the perspective.
Brother Nathaniel.
Now, I think I had to go through this last week when I had them boys. Sometimes you got to ask the questions, knowing why they did the little dumb stuff they did, so that now you can start working on their cognitive skills. So now they can start to work out reasoning and things of that nature. So it's like they don't have to come to me for everything, or they don't have to react. So now they can start to actually think like, okay, let me think before I do this. So that's a good time for me.
Yeah, I love everybody's responses, and I think as we start asking that question, you can see how challenging it can be to look at it from a positive side. What about a why question? A why question is dangerous, and if they are, why? Notice what I just did there. Did you catch it? Just playing.
I was corny too, but I got it though.
It
Oh
was
man,
it was
are
it
they,
was
I don't.
it was
I,
cerebrally for corny.
hey, at our age, corny is cool. You know what I mean? Nah. So, I think with conversations, anything can be touch and go, depending on the conversation, the person, and the relationship with that person. Because let somebody else come to me and say some stuff that Ro could say to me, or that coach or uncle could say to me, they're gonna have to run me they're gonna have to run me a fair one. Like, watch your mouth. Like, like because the relationship is not there, so it's taken differently. So so same thing with why questions. I think why questions are one, like, relationship has to have a position. Like, is our relationship comfortable enough to where I can question you on your foolishness, right? Or you know is the conversation so sensitive that if I ask a why question and go too deep, it may cause a hurt that can't be that'll stop us, right? Not saying that we can't return this conversation, but we can't meet a goal today because we don't went to because we went to a space you wasn't ready to go to. And I think that's only something that in my opinion, I think that's only something that a professional could really identify. That's why it's important to not be afraid to go find help, but or seek counsel, right? But it can be, but I think there's also a time where whys are necessary. And if you have that relationship with that person, ask those why questions. Dig a little bit, get them to open up because they can with you. And sometimes just getting them to go deeper helps can help the conversation or help the situation.
I kind of like the why questions though. And it may come down to what type of why question. You know, why you get a girl your phone number? Like, I don't want to hear stuff like that. Not me. That ain't me. I'm just saying that comes off different than um why do you think we should do it this way versus this way? You know what I mean? So I think with the why questions, the intent and kind of what is behind the why question is really kind of, I need to learn a little bit more about that, because if I'm having an argument or discussion or disagreement with Shell, I want her to kind of ask me, well, why why do you think we should do it this way? Because in a sense, it kind of lets me know that she's in tune and that she wants to know a little bit more about the plan or wants a little bit more insight, or maybe it's a sign that she's unclear about something. So in those senses, I welcome the why. Again, the other side's why you do this, why you ain't pick up your drawers. There was an old one I used to say back in the day. Why you ain't do this? Why you ain't fill up the gas? Why you ain't go get my Starbucks? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So I kind of depends on what the why is about. Before I kind of get my pennies in a bunch about the why.
I think why questions can be good because they force you to look at self. It's when you ask me a why, if I'm uncomfortable with it, it means I'm uncomfortable with a situation that I need to dig a little deeper. I need to figure this thing out because why am I uncomfortable with the why? Is it because I'm trying to avoid something? I'm trying to avoid exposing something. I'm not trying to dig deep because I can give you a little short answer, but then, well, why that? Why that? And it continues to force it back on me and not just everybody else where because everybody was doing it. That's not what we're talking about. Why did you? So it puts the self-awareness back in my court, and it also helps us look at our own actions or the person look at their own actions. But it can be on the other, like it can be harmful in some ways if you asking the whys and you really not looking for an answer. You just looking for your answer, or you just trying to dig, trying to pick. That's where it can be harmful. But other than that, when you're actually trying to have a conversation for understanding and not for just your understanding or your point of view, when you're asking the why questions, what they do is they lead that person to dig deeper because some people will ask, I don't know why I keep ending up with the same type of people. Yeah, you do. Just look at yourself and look at your patterns, and you will explain that off. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, I love all those responses. A lot of times, and again, it's all about timing and posture, because a lot of times, why questions can feel like it's coming from a position of authority, and it's perceived authority in most cases, because at the end of the day, no other person, unless placed in a position of authority over me, has authority over me. So you can ask a why question all you want to, but that why question need to come from a space of relationship, which means that you're not the authoritative figure in the relationship. You're a curious bystander, hopefully. But I do believe, and I think his divine appointment said that I think both of these are true. A lot of times it comes from judgment, but I also believe that it is a good point. It can be framed or used to manipulate if we don't understand it. But I also believe that they are great for deeper internal reflection, for awareness and correction. So it's all about posture. It's all about position. And again, just keep in mind, when you use why questions, you have to use them right. If not, I promise you, men feel like you think that you're their mother, and the response is not going to come. It won't be good. I just say it that way. It's going to be an ungood response. I say it that way. So that said, greatly appreciate you guys staying with us. Listen, make sure that you hit that like button if you haven't already. Also, there was a link that was provided for you. Again, take a look at it. You have a free download, and you also have an ebook as well. The ebook is a lot deeper dive than a free download. So that being said, this brings us to our bittersweet point, which is our final thoughts.
I think this may be one of my shortest final thoughts ever. And I'm going to just go with the title. The title for tonight's show is Unlocking Hidden Power in Every Conversation. Tonight, there was a lot of hidden power and information and all the good things in this conversation. So, my simple, best, shortest ever Um, Final thoughts is simple. Go back and re-watch this video. I guarantee you're gonna find something else in there that you missed. So it's like going back and watching that movie. Go back and re-watching that movie you hadn't seen in a long time. You're gonna see something different. So again, that's my final thought for tonight. Go back and re-watch this video because there's a lot of hidden power in this conversation specifically. That's my final thought.
Whew. This was a conversation for the ages. I feel like I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Um, Unlocking the hidden power in every conversation. All right, one, realize that you're not the master of every topic. Sometimes listening is best for you as well as the person speaking, right? And then when speaking, be clear and ask questions when you need them, right? Because I think too long we communicate with the idea that the other person is a mind reader. Like, you know what I want to hear, or I know what you want me to say. Concept. It's just understand that communication goes both ways. Questions need to be asked, and clarity needs to be given when speaking, so that this way we can we can reach the goal that is expected. Because I think we come into these conversations with an expected end, and if you have an expected end, make it plain, clarify it, make the vision plain, so that when I'm receiving it, I understand where we're going, and we can have this conversation intently, purposely, and purposefully. And that's all I have.
Love the topic. I think that we should learn to listen more than we speak, and listening includes personality, includes body language, includes fears, includes those things, so that you actually know who you're talking to, know who you're in relationship when you're having a conversation, and also while you're listening, learn to empathize and hold judgment, and make sure that the person feels at ease with exposing themselves. And not that you got to just expose yourself, but so they can feel free to. Sometimes when you have people, I was always taught, when you have people talking so much, they will talk themselves into or out of situations. So sometimes if you let people talk during the communication, you may have not have said a word, but they will solve their own problem, because you aren't the problem solver. You're there to actually allow them to have a space, and you should have something to say. And it's not about excellency of speech or anything like that, but it's about knowing who you're talking to and not talking over their head, or not putting it too low, but actually having a dynamic to where you guys can actually communicate and come together in a reasonable way.
Greatly appreciate everybody's point of view. I love this conversation. Like Unc said, go back and look at it. As we close today's episode, like, reflect. Reflect on the power of listening, questioning. Silence is very important as well. Silence for the right reason is always good. Sometimes silence can mean that I am just thinking and reflecting on what it is I want to say before I say it. You have to learn to be comfortable in silence, right? Make sure that you're able to observe nonverbal cues. And like Roland mentioned, empathy. Empathy is important. These aren't just tools for better communication, they're pathways for a deeper understanding and connection. So the next time that you're in a conversation, right, challenge yourself to listen more deeply and ask more thoughtful questions, and embrace the moments of silence that allow for reflection, because I think those are important. So again, go back, listen to it, make sure that you get your download. That way that you can challenge your communication efforts and understand the difference between encoding and decoding when it comes down to conversations. A lot of us don't do a really good job at decoding. A lot of us kind of bring our own biases into the conversation space and make a whole lot of assumptions when it comes down to it. So that's my final thought for today. Greatly appreciate everybody for what you've added in the chat. Everybody who what they add in the chat, everybody on the panel. Again, as always, valued. And last but not least, again, if you haven't hit that like button and shared it, make sure that you share it with somebody who you believe that will find value in this conversation. We did not get to all the questions today, just simply because I had a lot of them out there. I think we covered maybe half of them, if that. So, anything else you guys want to share? Oh, I got one other thing. August 16th, from 08 to 4 p.m. Make sure that you guys come out. It's going to be the Mindset, Habit, and Power Summit. I think it's going to be great. It's free. And so if you've seen that video that came on before the start of this show, that video gives you access. So make sure that you get your seat, because I guarantee they're going to go fast. Only limited seats. So make sure that you get on there. Make sure that you reserve your seat, because I'm telling you, you got 3 guest speakers that day, and I think you're going to be in for a load of good information, some actionable stuff that you can take with you that day, and I think you'll be pleased. And what a better way to spend a Saturday? Just keeping it real. So, anything else you guys want to add?
Man, I just want to reiterate, and I just want to say again, I really enjoyed this conversation tonight. We was going to, I was like, man, we only on like question 2, and we was at like 32 minutes and stuff. So, I think it was a very good conversation. I like all the opinions and perspectives that everybody had. All of the I'm looking at the comments. I don't really look at the comments over on the StreamYard. I'm looking, it's like 172 comments over there. So it's like the chat has been very active tonight. So I just want to shout out the chat too, the most empowering chat in all of YouTube. So I appreciate them. I appreciate you guys, man. I enjoyed myself here tonight.
Also, a little business to put out there. Cold Stone, if you hear, we need some sponsorship,
Yeah,
right?
sponsor.
We shouted y'all.
Yeah, we ain't gonna talk about Cold Stone no more tonight. Listen, we greatly appreciate you guys. With that being said, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening, and as always, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else. And we will see you guys next week at the same time, same channel for the Hearts of Men podcast.